Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Teaching under normal conditions, whatever that is these days in this wacky world, requires dedication, patience, and a love of teaching. We can all think of a special teacher who made a mark in our lives. Some teachers who are really gifted can change lives, others can save lives. My guest today is an extraordinary teacher. She has to be. As a speech language pathologist, Jennifer Lisberger gives children and adults the gift of communication, the ability to express themselves, to express their needs, their pleasures, and their displeasure in spite of their disabilities. Jennifer, welcome to 30 Minutes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. When our mutual friend, John Reef, told me about you and the wonderful work you're doing at CADES, we'll get into that, I was thrilled at the opportunity to visit with you because, as I said to you, I truly believe this. You are involved in some extraordinary work that requires an extraordinary individual. I can relate to that because my granddaughter teaches autistic children. She has 9 of them in a class down in Rockville, Maryland. And she loved those kids, and they love her back.
I'll bet, yeah. You have to love it.
Yeah, and she's doing extraordinary work. I mean, she cries for them, she laughs with them and for them.
Absolutely.
And I know there are good teachers in all specialties, but you're in an area that really does require an extraordinary God's gift.
Oh, thank you.
Now that I've complimented you as much as I'm going to in our 30-minute visit, you are employed by CADES, which is an acronym for Children and Adult Disability and Educational Services based in Swarthmore.
Yes.
Been around for about 60 years.
Correct.
Started by, as I recall, a man who had a child who had cerebral palsy and was dedicated to serving the needs of children, for the most part, with cerebral palsy, but over the years has branched out to provide educational services to children and adults who have many different types of disabilities.
Absolutely.
And you are this is the part that I still stumble over. You're a specialist in augmentative and alternative communication.
Yes.
Otherwise known as AAC.
Yes.
What is that?
So when you think about all types of assistive technology, there's assistive technology for many needs, whether it be a wheelchair, a cane, splinting for your arms, even a grip to hold your pencil if you need that in the classroom. Within that, you have augmentative and alternative communication. So this is for individuals who either have impaired or no speech, so verbal speech, anything that deviates from actually speaking. So when you think augmentative, it's something that's going to aid you when you have your verbal speech. So you have students who might have apraxia, dysarthria, something that makes it really difficult for them to speak. Perhaps adults who have had a stroke and their speech is very impaired. So I always use the example, let's say you go to Burger King and you want to order it your way and someone doesn't understand what you're saying. You can pull something out and say, listen, this is what I mean. And you can use something to augment that communication. I'm doing it right now with my hands. So
Is the technology relatively new?
It is. It is. There is technology that's been around for years. There have been picture symbols around, and sign language has been around for many, many years. But over the years, technology has grown, and it's been remarkable to see how much it's grown. We have students who are very physically compromised, who can't use their hands, who years ago would not be able to communicate to the degree they can now. You have an eye gaze system where they simply look at a picture on the screen and it speaks for them.
I have a friend, he teaches at Villanova, and much of the work he does as an independent film producer is related to people with disabilities. He loves to tell their stories and how they overcome their disabilities. Paraplegics who skydive and ski and do all kinds of nifty things. Anyway, he was telling me about one student in particular, quadriplegic, and as a result of an accident, and I'm not sure I can even imagine this, but somehow there's a device that they have rigged up for him. He's now writing screenplays.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one letter at a time with a pencil like this.
And he's typing it?
And he's hitting the keys.
Yeah.
A screenplay.
Yeah.
It takes him a long time.
I'm sure.
But he is determined, and
Absolutely.
he's doing it. And this chap's name is Steve McWilliams. He does wonderful work on behalf of these people. He said it's going to be an award winner. Somebody's going to actually put it on stage. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Or a
that's
movie.
amazing.
Yeah, it is.
My students astound me daily at how hard they work just to do
God-
very basic communication.
God gives them compensating gifts, doesn't he?
It's
Yeah.
they're remarkable.
Yeah, they are.
really do amaze me every day.
Yeah.
You know, something that I think a lot of us take for granted, something very simple.
Yeah.
You know, calling for help.
Yes.
If you're telling someone that you don't feel well,
Yes.
that we can do so easily. They are willing to put in so much work in order to do it. And it's a lot of work.
Now, you deal only with children, not adults. CADES is a service, provides services to children and adults.
To children and adults. I see students in the George Crothers Memorial School, which is the school age. We see individuals from 3 to 21.
And as an AAC specialist, augmentative and alternative communication specialist,
Yes.
is that a relatively new specialty?
It's
Because I
been-
never heard of it before. I've
it's-
heard of speech pathology. But
Sure. It's something as technology has been improving over time. It's an area that a lot of people within the field are taking a look at and saying, listen, this is something that's really beneficial and people need this, you know, and they need to have someone who is knowledgeable enough to know the different systems out there and how to help people who either have impaired or no speech.
Give us a sense of the range of disabilities your students have.
So in terms of the actual disabilities or
please. Yeah.
functioning?
Well, yes, to both.
Okay.
The disability and the consequence of the disability
Sure.
in terms of communication.
So we have individuals with cerebral palsy, we have individuals with traumatic brain injuries, we have individuals with chromosomal disorders, things like that. And then the range of impairment can be, you know, I hate to use the term low functioning because it sounds very harsh, but unfortunately that's the only term that
Yeah.
there is right now. So from that to very high functioning,
But they're all educable.
yes.
And how is that determined? Do they have to pass a test of some kind to be taken by
No, well,
CADES?
well, everyone is afforded an
Yeah,
education.
Okay.
So we take these students who it might be difficult or there isn't a place within the public school setting to help them. And we have the resources available and the knowledge base to help them be as functional as possible. You
What's
know,
the
whatever that looks like for that particular individual.
Okay. How many students do you have?
Within the school,
Well,
about,
no, within your class, I guess.
well, I service different classrooms.
Okay.
So it's not going to look like your typical school. It can be difficult to understand if you've never been in an approved private school for special needs students.
Okay.
It doesn't really go by grade level. So we don't have, this is the first grade class, this is the third grade class.
Right.
We go based on an age range and their abilities. So they can be with their peers and they can be taught in that way. So I service a variety of different classrooms within there, and I also help with any of the students who need augmentative and alternative communication.
Okay, but what is the average size of a class?
Of a classroom, about 9 students per classroom
Okay.
is what we're
And what's the
looking at.
ratio then? How many teachers?
1 teacher, as of now, 2 assistants, and then if they need any additional attention, so if they need a one-on-one perhaps to help them.
How long have you been with CADES?
Almost 5 years.
Yeah. And in the 5 years you've been there, have you seen any trends developing with the, well, there's a question in there someplace, Jennifer. Are you seeing more? I realize you have about 100 students, and that includes adults. But are you seeing more types of disabilities than you had seen before, or is the school seeing more types of disabilities than before? People with autism, for example, severe autism.
Right. We do.
1 in 85, I think the number is now.
Sure. We do have some students who perhaps will have an autism diagnosis. We don't specialize in autistic support. You know, there are facilities out there
Yes.
that really specialize in autism. I've worked in some previously. But that's not necessarily our main, we're not an autistic support school.
Since your field is still relatively new, AAC, augmentative, and alternative, I'm going to get that down.
You are.
Communication.
You can go home saying it.
Yes. There must be some established protocols, some methodologies, and so on. But do you have the opportunity to develop your own? With this device, by the
Sure.
way, which we will demonstrate in just a few moments,
Sure.
I guess it comes with a handbook or some kind.
And you get a nice manual
A little manual, yeah.
and a wonderful sales rep.
But as you work with it, you must come up with
Sure.
some other innovative ways to use it, to improve on whatever the manufacturer or whatever has determined to be its purpose. And is there some way to codify that? Are you developing your own methodologies, I guess is what I'm saying?
I mean, I do have very specific ways that I like to work on these.
Give me an example.
I have a tendency to like to work on categories with my students first to make sure that they're able to receptively identify whatever it is that I'm going to put on here, and I know that they know that vocabulary, and then I expand from there. There are different schools of thought in terms of how to use this kind of technology, and it's a growing field because
Yes.
it is so relatively new
Right.
that things have changed over the years. You know, there's this big push towards what they call core vocabulary. So that's vocabulary that you use on a daily basis.
Right.
Research has shown most people use this vocabulary most frequently, and they give them that vocabulary, and that way you're setting them up to communicate across the day in a very functional and general manner. I find that to be difficult for some of my students who don't necessarily have that type of abstract language. So when you think about language, you have concrete and you have abstract. This is a piece of paper in front of me. That is concrete. That lets you know that. If I call it this, that is a very abstract term, which some of my students aren't quite able to understand yet. I do have some who are remarkable with it.
Do you or does the school make a distinction between training and teaching? Is there a difference in your mind?
Training and teaching the students?
Yeah.
I think for me, it's all encompassing. You know, it's one of my hats, I like to call it,
Yeah.
you know, so I'm teaching and I'm training simultaneously. I'm teaching my students, I'm teaching and training my staff,
Yeah.
I'm teaching and training my families to let everyone know how to use this equipment.
Were it not for were it not for the technology, this equipment, you'd be using the old ways of teaching.
And I still do,
You do?
use some of, not all of my students are necessarily ready for something with voice output.
Can you sign?
Very, very little. Very little. I know some basics.
Do they
And-
teach signing at the school?
At
At
Kate's. Some of our students do sign. Again, a lot of them are modified signs due to fine motor difficulties, and we all know their modifications and what they mean. For our students, it can be really difficult because they're modified. We understand them, but again, you go to a store, they're not going to know what you're saying.
Let me get back to the question of teaching and training.
Sure, sure.
My granddaughter, before she went down to Rockville, was teaching at a program in Coatesville.
Okay.
And it was devoted, it was a private school, and it was dedicated to teaching kids how to deal with everyday situations, how to get on a bus, how to make change, those kinds of things, life skills. And outside of the classrooms, they would
Yep.
go on excursions, go to a movie, go to
Community
the
outings.
supermarket, and so on. Does Cage do that as well? Training, teaching outside of the classroom?
We do. We try and go on as many trips as possible. We do like to try some pre-vocational with the students where
Yeah.
it's appropriate.
Yeah.
They go to the movies, we go bowling, we'll go to the supermarket and teach them how to locate the items that
Yeah,
they need,
that's
grocery
great.
lists when we can. You can use an icon next to the name of it if they can't read, so that way they can locate it.
The best day for you must be when one of your students is able to do something after struggling and struggling, to either utter something or put some words together, and you see the smile come on their face
Oh,
because they know they've done something.
Yeah.
That's got to be the greatest day of your life.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And I
I
hope you
can't
have
tell
many
you
days
how many
like that.
happy tears I have,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Let's get to the device. This is
Sure.
just one of
just one
the
of
several devices?
There are so many communication device options out there.
And what is it called?
This is called a Dynavox Maestro.
That's the brand name.
Dynavox is the name of the company,
company.
and this is called the Maestro.
And is this the first of its kind, or does it represent a
This
progression?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dynavox has various communication devices. This is just one of the ones that they've developed. It's a little smaller and lightweight than some of their
This
other
is
ones.
not lightweight, Jennifer.
Comparatively,
Okay.
you should see some of the bulky ones from years ago. This isn't their most lightweight one. We have Their latest.
What
It
gives
looks like
it-
a tablet.
What gives it the heft? Are there batteries or something in
This
here?
is the battery in the back.
Oh, that's a big battery.
It's a
Yeah.
big, well, because you want to make sure it
Yeah,
lasts as long
sure.
as you need to communicate.
So what would you do if I were had impaired speech? How would you use this to help me?
Well, if this belonged to you and was your device,
All right.
I would teach you how to use it for different activities. So as things came up during your day, we could, let's say you had impaired speech
Yes.
rather than no speech.
Right.
If you said something to me that I was, not understanding, I would simply say to you, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Can you find it on here?
Uh-huh.
And then you go through the process of learning and teaching.
Are these the
where
only
the-
icons, or can it pull up
No,
many different kinds of icons?
So these devices are what you call dynamic display. So when you have a picture board,
Yes.
that's called static display. The pictures don't change, nothing opens, nothing moves on
Okay.
it. This is dynamic because the pages change on you. So each one of these folders links to another page of vocabulary. This is
Oh.
just one page set on the system
So
itself
the
as
top
well.
row are the folders, and below it are what's in those folders? Or are they all folders?
No, so
Let's go people.
sure. So if you go people, it's going to be all the people. This is listing some of the
Oh.
vocabulary that's going to be in people. Or when you do this, it opens up a whole new page
Okay.
of people that you might want to talk about. And when this is just the kind of generic page set, you modify it to suit the individual's needs. And that'll change over time. As you are a child, the things you want to talk about completely change when you become a sassy teenager.
So this teaches me a new vocabulary, or my own vocabulary? Do I develop my own vocabulary?
I would program, or the parents or anyone would program the
Yes.
vocabulary that you would need.
Okay.
Vocabulary that we see is appropriate for your.
Talk about the role of the family. You mentioned that before,
Mm-hmm.
that they are as important to you as your students are. To what extent does the family participate in teaching, using these devices and perhaps others?
Sure. If it belongs to the student, I always encourage the families to take it home and use it as much as possible. I always like to say that communication doesn't happen in a 30-minute pull-out session with me. It happens all day, every day. So it should be happening at home as well. And I'm fortunate I have wonderful families who are very excited about the technology that's out and wanting to use it at home. And I can see the difference. So I have one student who, when I sit down and talk to him and I say, how's your family? He can say, they are great. And what'd you do with them? I played games with my sister last night.
Using this device?
Using that.
Right.
He's remarkable. He makes sentences. So it's really kind of fantastic. We have some students who are still at that category level where it's just one picture of a category
Yes.
and then it has basic vocabulary. He's using this sentence bar to create his own sentences and his own novel thoughts. He's one of the ones that brings tears to my eyes.
What is the hope and expectation for some of, if not all, the students when they graduate? I assume they graduate
They do
from Case.
graduate.
Do they go on to be functioning and hold jobs, part-time jobs, full-time jobs?
It varies. A lot of my students are very physically compromised, so vocation isn't always an option.
Right.
Sometimes it's a day program that they go to. But my end goal is always independence as much as possible, quality of life, and functional communication to the best of their ability.
Tell me the story of one extraordinary student that you've had so far, who has gone on to do something extraordinary.
Well, I already told you about one of them, and
Yeah.
he's pretty outstanding in what he's done. Right now he's using a very sophisticated page set. He's doing it throughout the day, at home, in school. He'll carry on entire conversations with you, past and present tense, understands all of that. What was amazing is I didn't teach him all of that. He picked up on it incidentally. He heard what people were saying and he knew to say I am instead of I are because he heard it and he has sight words. Remarkable to me. I have another student who uses an eye gaze device who
A what device?
it's an eye gaze device. Okay. So instead of using his hand to access these
Yes.
buttons, he uses his eyes. He looks at the icon and it pops open.
Really?
And it speaks for him. And he's working on creating sentences with it.
Wow.
Phenomenal, exhausting.
I'm sure.
If you ever try
Yes,
it,
yes.
I have everyone in the school who works with these students try it for themselves so they know what our expectation is for our students. It's exhausting.
I know there's some other technology in other venues where with just hand motion you can move screens and icons and so on. Is that technology now being applied to machines like this so that with hand movement they can select icons?
Not that I've seen. We do have external switches, and you can do scanning. So it will go from icon to icon or a section of each page, and you, wherever the switch may be, let's say you can use your hand or you need to use your cheek, you hit the switch and then it activates that area.
Is it aspirational that some of the students will be able to go on and be mainstreamed in a public school system or another private school system, to go on to get a conventional, traditional degree?
When possible. I mean, it would be nice if...
Yeah, but it hasn't happened so far as you know?
I know that we have had some students who've been able to be brought back into the district and mainstreamed, which is wonderful for them, you know, as long as they have an appropriate fit for our students.
Yes.
Socially, it's great to be amongst your peers. Our students are amongst their peers in a different way. You know, they all have, it's really nice that they can sit, and especially with this type of technology, sit at the lunch table and communicate with and make friends and really socialize in a way that they couldn't before.
The only limitation I can think of is that this is expensive. No, it's the expense.
They're costly.
Yeah.
But what would you pay for your voice?
That's not a fair question. I don't.
I'm just saying.
Anything.
And I understand that
Is there financial assistance to students and their families to purchase these?
If we go through their private insurance, they can purchase it through their insurance.
They can?
Yes, and you can get a new one every 5 years as long as you need something updated or if it's no longer functioning. Yeah.
And are there, if I purchase one, or the school purchases it, are there automatic updates on the software?
Sure.
Is that free or is that an additional expense?
So far, I've always had it be free.
Yeah,
so,
it should be.
Yeah,
Okay.
those types of things are always. And you get warranty. Most of them come with at least 1 year warranty on it. So if something should malfunction, you can send it out for repairs.
We've talked about what you hope to enable your students to achieve, basic communication ability, skills. What is it you hope to achieve? You're a young woman. You're starting, well, 5 years and so on, but you're still relatively young in your career. You see so much. You see so much need and opportunity. What do you hope to achieve as a professional?
As a professional?
Right. You must have a dream.
I love what I do.
Yes.
This is what I want to do. I want to work with this population. I want to help them as much as I can. I want to help the families. I love what I do.
Where did that come from? Were your parents teachers?
No, my father is a physician and my mom was a nurse.
Ah.
My older sister was a speech-language pathologist as well.
But not at AAC.
No.
You're the only AAC.
She used communication devices, but...
Is that becoming more prevalent around the country? Schools using this specialty?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
Once people see how amazing it is and what it does for individuals, it would be hard to not educate yourself on it and make sure that you know how to work with this kind of system.
Well, is the teaching, the training using these devices available only in the classroom, or do you, or whether Cage does it or not, does somebody else take it into the home rather than the student having to come to the classroom? If a student is not able to come to a classroom or can't afford, for whatever reason, to be in a classroom, do you or people like you take this to the home for home training?
Not as much. I believe so. I haven't had students who, in terms of affordability, they are entitled to the free education, the, least restrictive environment. So if that is the environment that's appropriate for them, they're there.
But suppose a child, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but suppose a child it becomes anxious in a classroom setting, or has some other issues, and would prefer and probably would do better if trained, taught at home.
Sure.
Does Cage provide that kind of training, or are there others who go into the home?
I'm sure it would be provided by the school district. I know that for our early intervention services, so that birth to 3, people do go into the homes and they work with the families there.
Is teaching adults what you teach more difficult? Because adults, even those who don't have disabilities, very often find it difficult to learn new skills, or slower, and I can speak to that. I'm a little slow when it comes to picking up new things. Are they slower? Is it more difficult to teach adults?
I think it varies. I think sometimes it can be difficult to teach.
You should be a consultant. It varies, could be, I'm not sure.
It's difficult to say when you're working with people. You know, everyone, to
You're
generalize
absolutely
a
right.
statement
You're absolutely
where you say every adult is going to be,
Yes.
it could be very difficult.
Yep.
So what I find with the younger students is teaching them that this is your voice and
Yes.
it's not a toy. That can be
Yeah.
very difficult, especially with, you know, technology out there
Yes.
for playing and for games. It can be difficult to train them in that way.
5 years from now,
Okay.
what will this technology look like? What will it do that it doesn't do now?
I hope it'll be, some of them will be more lightweight.
Me too, yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them, it's helpful that it's a little more heavy because it's harder to pick up and chuck.
Well, but you mentioned already that some people can communicate with eye contact, sensing.
It would have a separate
Yeah,
eye gaze, eye tracking system
Okay.
underneath it.
and I mentioned that this hand navigation technology already
Absolutely.
exists.
Absolutely.
So I would think that would be another application.
Sure.
But is there technology that, if I can't quite get the words out the way they should sound, that will decipher my speech so it comes out in plain English?
That would be neat. That'd be very
I'm
nice.
just wondering if
I
that
don't know
technology
if,
doesn't already exist.
not to my knowledge.
No?
I think that would,
There's an opportunity.
there you go.
Yeah.
I think that would be a little
We
difficult,
may have
but
an entrepreneurial
you know,
venture right here.
there you go. Trademark it right now. You heard it here first.
Well, as I said, I think you're doing great work.
Thank you.
And I wish you well. You're going to have your own school someday, I'm sure.
Oh,
You and my granddaughter, as a matter of fact, because she wants to have her own school someday for autistic children.
oh really?
Yeah, she does.
Oh, there you go.
And that's her aspiration.
So-
So we hope the family can somehow come together and put up $5 or $6 and help her get started.
Sure, right?
We talked about your specialty, and I'll close out with this last question. If this is a growing specialty, will there, in your opinion, will there eventually be certification required for it? You told me earlier that it's more you gain experience and you become expert based on experience.
Right.
There is no special schooling or certification required for it. Is that correct?
When you're in your studies, you can focus on different areas
Yes.
that you find to be of interest. There is assistive technology certification that you can receive, and that would be,
That's
again,
a
that,
general-
that umbrella
Yes.
of all sorts of assistive technology. As of now, in terms of this specialty area.
Right. Okay, it'll come. The government, sooner or
I
later,
think.
will get you. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, thank you very, very much
Thank
for being
you
here.
so
It's been my
much.
pleasure. Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I am Rick Anthony. Take very, very good care of yourselves. Check out CADES, CADES.org, and take a look at the wonderful work they do and the people like Jennifer who are helping people. Take care.